Paris was raining, as if the sky had decided to give up its own weight. The city smelled of wet paper, old stone, and broken promises. Ezra Delacroix watched the world through the fogged-up window of his black car, parked in front of 86 Rue de la Guerre. From Three Frères, the abandoned mansion he had inherited 7 years earlier, belonging to a woman he had never met. Your biological mother. It was strange to think of her as real. All he knew was in the cold papers of the registry office: name, date of birth, cause of death. No affection, no memories, no explanation. Just a handwritten will with one solitary clause: don't sell. One day you'll understand. For years, he ignored the warning. But that morning, something had disturbed him. A dream, a feeling, a specific emptiness that had no name. Ezra had woken in a sweat, with a vivid memory of a woman he had never seen in his life. Dark hair, intense eyes, and a voice that said, "Open the house. It's past time." He obeyed. He turned off the engine, got out of the car, and walked through the rain with firm steps. The key still worked. The lock turned with a dry click. When the door opened, the house swallowed the sound of the world. Inside, time stood still. The air was thick. The scent was too sweet to be musty. There was something familiar and forbidden about the scent, as if it had been made to evoke memories he'd never experienced. The wood floor creaked beneath his footsteps. Ezra walked through the main hall with restrained attention. The house was untouched, furniture covered in sheets, mirrors veiled by cloths, pictures turned to the wall. Everything was as he had left it on the day of the formal visit with the lawyer. But there was something new. At the foot of the spiral staircase, on the faded Persian rug, lay a black box, made of rigid paper. No sender, no recipient, just a red wax seal, with the symbol of a feather crossing a cracked mirror. Ezra stopped in front of her. He took a deep breath. He felt something stir inside him, as if a forgotten mechanism had begun to turn. He took a pocket knife and broke the seal with surgical precision. Inside was a notebook bound in dark leather. When he touched it, he felt a chill that didn't come from the cold. On the back cover, dedication. To him who never knew me, but missed me. Signed, eh? Ezra sat on the floor, still holding the notebook. He flipped to the first page. The handwriting was elegant, curved, intimate. It didn't look like just writing. It looked like a handwritten whisper. "I saw you yesterday, sitting in the library, in the gray suit that still smells of rain. The glass of whiskey was no longer in your hand. It was lying on the carpet. You were shivering, but not from the cold. And in front of you, my photograph was slowly burning. Still, you didn't look away. Why?" Ezra dropped the diary. He had had this dream the night before. Exactly like that. Same library, same suit, same glass, same photograph. But how? He opened the diary again, his fingers trembling. The pages that followed described his memories. Intimate, hidden, inaccessible. Moments of humiliation, secret fears. The night he had almost fled his own company without telling anyone. You cried in the bathroom of the hotel in Milan. The contract wasn't what you wanted. It was what they expected you to accept. But you knew it would slowly kill you. He never told anyone about that. But there it was, written, recorded, with a disturbing tenderness. Ezra felt something collide inside his chest. A dull sound, a memory of a feeling he couldn't name. Turned the page. An envelope taped to the back fell into her lap. Inside was an old photograph, sepia tones. A woman standing in front of her own house. That house. Her black dress showed off her delicate shoulders. Her gaze went straight to the camera, or maybe for him. On the back of the photo, a handwritten phrase. I didn't exist here yet, but you were already looking for me. Ezra ran his fingers over the image, as if trying to summon someone he'd never seen. But something burned beneath his skin. This wasn't a simple coincidence. It was as if someone knew him inside out. At the end of the third page of the diary, a note in red. If you've come this far, it's because you've heard me whisper. At the same moment, the door upstairs creaked. Ezra stood up suddenly. The silence of the house became presence. The scent grew stronger, burning jasmine. And for a second, he wanted to run away. But he didn't run away. He climbed the stairs slowly, the diary clutched to his chest. In the hallway, the oval mirror hanging on the wall showed only his reflection, but behind his shoulders something appeared. A shape, a feminine shadow. Ezra turned around. Nothing. He looked back at the mirror, and there was the word, written like condensation on the glass. Go on. Ezra walked down the stairs, his heart pounding. The word continue slowly evaporated from the mirror, as if it had been written by an invisible hand, or by something that only existed when he wasn't looking. Back in the lobby, the world seemed more compact, the light lower, the silence thicker. He held the diary as if it were a living fragment of someone absent, and unable to contain himself, he dove back into those strangely intimate pages. You always said you didn't want anyone to really know you, but I never asked permission. I came in. I stayed. The words seemed to hear him. The diary was like a listening ear to what he never said out loud. Ezra didn't know whether to read or be read. On the third page of that passage, he found a new folded note, like a poorly made origami. Inside, a handwritten poem. There's a room in you that you have never opened. It is where I kept myself when you threw me out. Now it starts knocking. Will you open it? The phone downstairs rang. The shrill ringing shattered the silence. Ezra jumped out of his chair, hurried downstairs, and answered it. Delacroix. Mr. Delacroix? The voice on the other end was that of the doorman of the block. There is a young lady here. She says she needs to see you. Urgent. Ezra was silent for 2 seconds. Did she say her name? No. He just handed over a note. Can I read it? Please. It says, if you open the diary, you will know who I am. Signed only with the letter A. The chill crept up Ezra's back like a wet blade. Every part of him wanted to say no, to run away, to avoid, but the part that commanded his hand said, let her in. It was raining harder when she appeared at the door. Tall, dark wine dress, slightly wavy brown hair, falling over her shoulders as if obeying the silence. Her skin was pale, without looking sick. Her eyes, intense like those of someone who already knew what he felt. She looked at him as if they had already said goodbye once. Ezra Delacroix, she said. Her voice was firm. Low, deep. You're... Hey, he almost whispered. She hesitated for a second. Then she smiled, a brief, melancholy smile, with the taste of something unsaid. Not exactly. So who are you? She walked in without asking. The sound of her heels was swallowed up by the ancient floorboards. Let's just say I came to tell the rest of the story. From her delicate hands, she took something out of her bag. A second diary. This is volume 2. She held it out as if passing an artifact. Ezra didn't touch it. He watched. What's going on? Who are you? He insisted. She turned to the mirror at the end of the hallway. The right question isn't who am I, Ezra? It's why did you erase me? Silence settled in like a mist. Ezra closed the door. He slowly approached the woman. The scent was the same as in the first diary. Jasmine, fresh ink, and something indefinable, like wet memory. Is this some kind of joke? Do you know me? You're the one who should know me. She touched the mirror with her fingertips. Go there. Why? Because that's where you first saw me, even before you knew my name. Ezra turned to the mirror. His reflection awaited him. But behind her reflection, her silhouette began to form, different from her real. The woman in the mirror was wearing a black dress. Her hair was tied up. She was smiling with her eyes. Ezra blinked. He looked to the side. The royal woman stood there, motionless. But in the mirror, the other one was approaching. And then, without sound, his lips moved. 3 words. Keep reading me. The mirror condensed around the sentence, and a delicate crack appeared in the center. Ezra turned around, but the woman was no longer in the room. In the place where she had been, there was only the second diary, still closed, and a single rose, wet from the rain that had not even come in through the door. Ezra went back up to the second floor with the new diary in hand. The silence in the house now seemed charged with expectation, as if she, Antônia, or whatever it was waiting for something from him. Not a reaction, but a decision. The rain outside was constant, a hypnotic sound that enveloped the rooms. Inside the house, Time was a motionless figure. Ezra entered the library and sat down in the leather chair near the window. The same chair where, in the dream described in the first journal, he had been sitting with the glass of whiskey spilled on the carpet. He opened the second notebook. The first page was blank, not just white, too clean, as if no pen would dare touch it. Ezra turned to the next page. Now that you remember me, I can start writing again. The handwriting was the same, but the sentences carried a new weight, as if they were not just telling, but questioning. Do you think you invented me? Or that you dreamed me so many times that I ended up believing I was real? What if I told you that I was the mirror where you fell in love with yourself, with a reflection that you couldn't hide anymore? Ezra felt something press against his sternum, like an emotional pain with a physical thirst. He closed his eyes. He tried to remember. There were fragments, silhouettes, smells, a muffled laugh in the dark, a presence on the pillow next to him, but nothing complete. Suddenly a draft blew in from the window. The diary turned a page by itself, and glued there, like a blade between the skin and the memory, was a small card, the size of a cutout photograph. It was a blurred image. Antônia from behind, sitting on an old bed. The caption, recording number 3, forgotten room. Ezra stood up. That bed in the picture was nowhere in the house, but the mirror in the hallway still had the same crack, as if it wanted to be opened. Ezra approached the glass. Now there was an entire scene reflected there, an unfamiliar room, red carpet, a fireplace, the same gold frame painting her birth mother kept, and on the bed, cassette tape with the number 43 handwritten on it. Ezra didn't think. He touched the mirror. This time, the glass gave way. The room on the other side was warm, warmer than any room in the house. But the temperature wasn't physical. It was sensory, as if the entire space pulsed with what had been experienced there, as if he belonged there. The tape was already inserted into the record player on the dresser. Ezra pressed play. The voice that came out was not Antonia's. It was his. If you are hearing this, it means I failed to forget her. Maybe that is the mistake, thinking that forgetting is control. But what we love cannot be deleted. It hides. It disguises itself. It transforms itself and comes back. Ezra put his hand over his mouth. He recognized himself, but he also seemed like another him. More broken, more surrendered. The voice on the recording continued. She met me in silence. She touched me before she touched me. She wasn't born. She was felt. And maybe that's why it hurt so much. Ezra sat on the edge of the bed. The air seemed to hold a sensual vibration, like the warmth of an absent body. Her scent came from the pillow, from the walls, from time. He saw the mirror on the dresser. In the reflection, Antônia was sitting in the armchair, watching him. Her eyes were not begging. They were waiting. She crossed her legs slowly, her knees exposed. A dress made of fabric that slid like skin. Ezra whispered, "What is your name?" In the reflection, her lips moved. "Antônia. The woman you created so you wouldn't go crazy, and then erased so you could continue being who they expected you to be." Ezra stood up, but when he turned back, she wasn't there. Just the sound of the tape still playing, with his own voice saying, "If you write about her again, she'll come back." The cassette tape kept spinning, but there was no sound anymore. Just a white noise, like an electric fog, and the faint rustle of writing. Ezra looked around, nothing in his hands, but on the desk in his room, a new diary seemed to be writing itself. He came closer. The lyrics were the same, but now they came in real time. "You gave me a name. Then you try to put an end to me. But stories with too much truth don't accept a full stop." Ezra ran his fingers over the newly written sentence. It was still wet with ink, or blood, or something that held liquid memories. He sat down in the chair in front of the desk. He took a deep breath and let his eyes move over the landscape around him. The room was an impossible mix of pasts. The armchair was the same as the one in the orphanage where he had grown up. The curtain was the color of the dress of the last woman he had truly loved, and the clock on the wall still stuck at 4:43. Ezra stood up. He opened the wardrobe. Inside, just a single object, a glass box with a red ribbon wrapped around it, and a note. If you remember, she'll come back. Inside the box was an old perfume bottle. No brand, no cap, just a worn inscription, A.43. He recognized it, the name of the experimental project he had signed years before, when he decided to erase from himself a presence he could not control, a love he did not want to admit existed. The lid of the box opened by itself. Ezra took the vial. The smell was unmistakable. Jasmine, memory, desire, and something else, guilt. The mirror on the wall vibrated, not like a surface, like a beating heart. Ezra walked closer. In the reflection, Antônia was lying on the bed, on her back. Her dress fell down her shoulders. Her loose hair fell in a cascade over the white sheets. She whispered words that he couldn't hear, but that he felt beneath his skin. You saw me before you named me. You desired me before you touched me. And you erased me before you loved me. Ezra touched the mirror with his ink-stained finger. The glass melted, and he felt his knees. The real room was different now. He was inside the memory. Antônia sat up in bed slowly. Her face was still invisible, but the silhouette was more real than any memory. She turned her face, and he saw, for the first time, without reflection, without symbol, without fear, deep-set, lively, painfully intense eyes. Ezra, she said, do you remember now? Ezra didn't answer with words. He took a step forward. He reached out his hand and touched hers. Warm, alive, present. Why did you come back? He asked. She smiled with the pain of someone who loved someone who tried to forget her. Because you wrote to me again. I'm not done. That's why I haven't left yet. She leaned over. She touched his face with her fingertips. Write it down, before your memory erases you again. The night in Paris progressed like ink spilled over a map. In the house, time remained suspended, as if it had surrendered to her presence. Antônia was there, sitting on the bed, her knees covered by a white sheet, her shoulders bare, her eyes scanning his as if she were searching for something she knew she would not find whole. Ezra paced around the room. The bottle of perfume she had found seemed to pulsate in her hand. In the other, she held the diary, now stained with words that ran in red ink. You didn't erase me because you didn't love me. You erased me because you loved me too much, and that you couldn't stand. Ezra turned his eyes to her. Antônia wasn't crying. She wasn't accusing. She was just there, as if she had always been there. I signed it, didn't I? He said, almost like a confession. She nodded slowly. Project A.43. You wanted to erase the emotional presence without destroying the objective memory. But emotions are not archives, Ezra. They are roots. Ezra sat on the edge of the bed. The sheets crumpled under his hands. Her scent was in the air. The silence between them wasn't absence. It was compressed presence. What were we? She smiled sideways. An attempt. Of what? Of making love work without a name. Of making two strangers feel as if they had always known each other. Ezra ran his hand through his hair uneasily. Was that real? She came closer, her face now inches from his, her breath hot, her eyes dark like a dive impossible to return from. Real is everything that transforms you. She kissed him, slowly, as if time were waiting, as if the world were watching in silence. Ezra responded, and for a moment, everything that had been between them came back. The first laugh, the dance in the middle of the night in an empty room, the touch of fingers between the sheets, the promise he whispered and never had the courage to keep. But soon after the pain, Antônia pulled away. There was blood at the corner of her mouth. Ezra's eyes widened. What was that? She put her fingers to her lips. She smiled sadly. Every time you remember, something is rebuilt, but it also wears out. Ezra was shaking. Am I hurting you? She shook her head. You're rewriting me. But if you stop halfway, what? I'll disappear. Ezra ran to the desk. He opened the diary with feverish hands. The last pages began to fade. The words disappeared before his eyes. He shouted, No, I will write. I will continue. Antônia stood up. Then listen to me. She came closer. She held his face between her hands, right about me as I was, afraid, with flaws, but yours. Ezra dove into his writing, his breathing quick, his eyes watering, and his fingers steady. She liked lukewarm coffee, walking barefoot, playing sad music to make her feel more alive. She didn't exist, but she made me feel more real than anyone else. Erasing Antônia was like trying to rip my own name from my skin. I failed, because part of me is her. When he finished, he looked at the bed. Antônia slept, serene, but on his right hand, there was still blood. Ezra understood. The memory exacted a price, and he was willing to pay it. Ezra woke up in the library chair with his hand still closed over the pen. The diary rested on his lap like a sleeping animal, but in the back of his mind, one sound continued to echo, her breathing. He got up slowly, like someone who still doesn't know if he's in a dream. He went upstairs. The room was empty. The bed was made. The fireplace was out. Antônia had disappeared, but on the desk there was now a black folder with the same symbol as the box, a feather passing through a cracked mirror. Ezra opened it with shaking hands. Documents, clinical reports, signatures, brain maps, and at the top, the complete project file. Patient Ezra Delacroix. Project A.43, Unstabilized Emotional Bond / Emerging Affective Entity. Date of deletion request, November 14th. Reason stated, dangerous level of emotional dissociation. Inability to distinguish between a real emotional bond and a constructed bond. Ezra felt a metallic taste in his mouth. He continued reading. The emotional entity associated with the patient presents a pattern of sensory and cognitive autonomy. The bond was built over 43 deep immersion sessions. Disconnection was authorized after evidence of irreversible emotional fusion. On the side of the file were handwritten notes. They didn't look like medical notes. They were personal notes. He started dreaming about her again, even after the forgetting protocol. She still calls him by name, even when he's awake. If he writes about her again, the bond reactivates. Ezra stepped back from the desk. He felt exposed, violated. He hadn't just loved Antônia. He had been a part of her. She was the emotional mirror of everything he could never verbalize. And when he tried to kill her, erasing her from within, she found a way to come back through writing. The house phone rang. Ezra answered, his fingers still stained with ink. Mr. Delacroix, this is Etienne from the Neurological Center of Marseille. You contacted us years ago. Earlier today, someone accessed your file in the system. We need to know if it was you. Ezra closed his eyes. No, the system registered a female fingerprint. Ezra dropped the phone. On the stairs, the sound of footsteps. He turned around. Antônia, dressed in white, stepping on tiptoe like a red echo. Her face was tired but calm. Did you read it all? She asked. He nodded. So now you know. I didn't invent you, Ezra said, but you completed me. She replied. They stared at each other in silence, and in that silence, no doubt remained. Antônia was a memory, but also a desire. She was an invention, but also a consequence. Ezra held out his hand. She touched his fingers, as if she knew she couldn't stay there much longer. What if I try to love you again? He asked. Antônia smiled. Then maybe I'll stop disappearing. The whole house seemed to react to her presence. Every step Antônia took made the floor warmer. Every sentence Ezra wrote made the lights flicker subtly. It was as if the fabric of reality bent at the act of remembering it hard enough. Ezra locked himself in his office. The third journal now lay before him, blank. But he knew the first word would carry creative weight. He took a deep breath. Antônia, I write to you as someone who bleeds to keep alive the part of me that I was forced to kill. The words came slowly, but densely. With each sentence, the environment seemed to transform. In the reflection of the window, he was no longer alone. Antônia stood watching him, like a silent reader of a book that had not yet been finished. Ezra wrote for hours. She spoke little, but with meaning. She liked silence, not because she was shy, but because she knew how to listen to the world. She was the kind of presence that taught you to stay whole, even when everything told you it was safer to be broken. I didn't fall in love with Antônia because she was perfect. I fell in love because she saw the imperfections that I never let anyone touch, and she did. In the mirror to her left, Antônia was now sitting. She moved her fingers. She stepped delicately on the floor. Ezra turned around. She was there. Real. No noise. No magic. Just as someone who existed because she was remembered with enough truth. "I'm getting stronger," she said. "Why am I writing to you? Because now you are feeling me with words. Not just remembering, but wishing." She came closer. She sat down opposite him. "You can draw me with words, Ezra, but also write what you fear." "What?" "Write about the day you realized you loved me, and yet you erased me." Ezra hesitated. He picked up the pen. The day was gray. She was sleeping. I looked at her as if I were looking into my own abyss and missing her. And I knew that if I stayed, I would change. And if I changed, I would no longer know how to be who others expected. So I asked to forget her, and I left. He dropped the pen. "I was a coward." "You were human," Antônia replied. She touched his face. "But now, by writing to me, you are being truthful." Ezra took a deep breath. "What if one day I forget again?" Antônia smiled with sad sweetness. "Then write to me again, as many times as necessary." In the fireplace, the flames danced silently. In the diary, filled pages seemed to radiate heat. Ezra stood up. He walked towards Antônia. "Are you still just a memory?" She touched his chest. "Sit." He closed his eyes. Felt her heart, knocking. "Maybe it's more than that, Ezra. Maybe now. I'm presence." The last day in the house was different. The sun streamed through the windows without asking permission. The shadows danced as if they were aware of the new presence that lived there. Ezra walked through the rooms barefoot, the final diary under his arm and breathing evenly, as if each room now recognized Antônia. She walked among the objects naturally, as if she had always known them. Each gesture of hers reconfigured the space. The library seemed more alive. The staircase seemed lighter. The mirror no longer reflected itself. "Are you ready?" she asked, sitting at the window, her eyes looking out over the rooftops of Montmartre. "I don't know, but do you want to finish?" Ezra nodded. He sat down at his desk. The diary now had only 3 blank pages. He picked up the pen. She wasn't a mistake. She wasn't an escape. She was the part that stayed when everything else in me wanted to disappear. Loving Antônia was like leaning against a mirror and seeing that the reflection had a heartbeat. Like hearing your own name said by someone who reinvented it. If you find this diary, don't ask yourself if she existed. Ask yourself what in you has tried to erase and still whispers inside. Antônia stopped behind him. She read the last words with a smile of someone who had arrived where she needed to be. "That's it," she said. Ezra closed the diary. He turned to her. And now, she took his hands and placed them on her chest. "Now I stay. As long as you leave me written. As long as you feel me more than trying to prove it." She kissed him. Slowly, with all the time inside. And then it started to disappear. But not like before. This time wasn't a disappearance. It was a transition. Ezra saw her features turn into words. Her skin, handwriting. Her perfume, paper. And in the mirror, she was still there. Sitting, turning pages. She was no longer just a memory. She was living literature. Years later, the diary was found in the abandoned house of Ezra Delacroix. No one knew why it had disappeared. There were no records of his death, nor of his travels. But the diary was published by a small publisher, without retouching, without cuts. The title, The Diary of a Woman Who Never Existed, author Ezra Delacroix. But whoever read it swears they heard her voice. The book became a cult favorite. Readers reported smelling a faint jasmine scent on the pages. Others said that in certain passages, the ink felt warm to the touch. And in some cases, the nearest mirror reflected 2 readers, even when there was only one, because it existed, because he wrote it, and because some loves refuse silence.